All right.
We picked the Chiefs to win yesterday.
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsch.
And we're back. Welcome to Glove Fist. My name is Frank Lotierzo, former fighter, part-time writer, full-time observer, joined by co-host Jack Hirsch, former 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association of America. Jack, we have a lot to talk about. I will just say this. I know we're going to get the beater beef and some big fights upcoming. Look back at a couple, do some hypothetical fights. But I saw some boxing this weekend in the NFL in the San Francisco 49ers Philadelphia Eagles championship game, where at the end of the game, the linebacker of the 49ers was trying, Dre Greenlaw was, what did he throw? 3 left hooks to knock the ball out of the Eagles running back's hands, trying to force a fumble late in the game after the game was decided.
I don't think he got the ball out, but there were a number of left hooks on the ball. It was like Rocky pounding the meat. And Frank, not just that, what was these 49er fans with the Rocky statue throwing their banners on top of it, covering it up? I mean, boxing was in the house even through football.
And Jack, you know what's funny? And I see Joe Bergman already on Fly Eagles Fly. Joe, I've been wanting to tell you this for a while. You're my man, but you know what? That has to be the corniest, cheesiest saying I've ever heard. Fly, Eagles, fly. But one thing about the Eagles, Jack, unlike Rocky Balboa, they're not an underdog. And just to touch on this quickly, where it parallels with boxing a little bit, I saw a lot of bad officiating in both games. And if you read social media and even an article on Yahoo, Jack, the presumption was that the NFL wanted the Eagles and the Chiefs in the final because you have the 2 number 1 seeds, the two players that are probably in the running for MVP in Hirsch and Mahomes. You have Andy Reid, who is the winningest coach of both teams. You have the Kelsey brothers, and then you have Patrick Mahomes playing at State Farm Stadium in Arizona, when he does a lot of commercials for State Farm. And, I could see some of the boxing conspiracies in there regarding the judging and some of the calls. I know you don't buy that, but it was out there.
No, Frank, it would be criminal if the NFL or anyone else fixed the judges, the referees for the NFL.
Right.
But listen, officials are human. You're playing in another team's home stadium. If you feel a certain amount of hostility, it could intimidate you. I mean, we see that in boxing. And what happens during a football game? The fans boo a certain call when they don't see the penalty flag. And 3 seconds later, the flag is thrown. So there's that intimidation factor. But no, I mean, nothing would get fixed. It's the same way, with boxing decisions. Listen, judges.
I think it was just bad officiating. I agree.
Judges know in boxing who appoints them. And they know who the promotion, who the sanctioning body, who the TV networks want to win. They know where the money's involved. So they don't want to go against something really popular. And even this week, Arda Beterbiev fought, but Dimitri Bivol was in the house. And of course, when he fought Canelo, we had discussed how the 3 judges had it a lot closer than it actually was. They all had it 115, 113, 7
right,
rounds.
7-5.
And it was really more like a 9 rounds to 3 fight. Yet they had it a little too close for comfort. They put Canelo in position to win, put it that way. I mean,
Jack, think about this. Before we get to the fight, think about this. The fallout from the Beterbiev fight is, at least from what I've seen, most people, after watching that fight, and even though it was an impressive win for Beterbiev, pick Bivol to beat him. And if you go by that, and if you remember, I said back then, and you agreed, that Canelo fought the second best light heavyweight in the world. I mean, there's a case now you could say he might be the number one guy, and that loss doesn't look as bad now as it did then.
But Frank, there's so many variables involved. You know that better than anyone else in comparing Bivol and Beterbiev and looking at certain factors. We could say, well, what happens had Bivol been there instead of Anthony Yarde? Okay? But I can also say, what happens had Bivol faced Canelo? I mean, Beterbiev faced
Beterbiev, right.
Instead of Bivol. I don't think Canelo goes the distance. I think Beterbiev stops Canelo. Canelo would be right in front of him, and I don't think he survives that power.
Yeah, because Canelo can't beat him moving away.
I was very big on Beterbiev beating Bivol, and it's tightened up to me. It's like one of these elections that the polls show one candidate so far ahead. And as we're getting to election day, even though we're not getting there quite yet, and we might never see this fight, it's tightened up to me. I have that.
All right, well, let's touch on the result.
Yeah.
Beterbiev, 19-0, 19 knockouts, stops Yarde, 23-3, 22 knockouts in the 8th round. He retains 3 of the light heavyweight belts. I didn't score the fight. Yarde led on 2 of the 3 cars when it was halted. Beterbiev lands a right hand in the 8th round, drops him, gets up, goes in to finish him. The corner stops it. Yarde, I think Jack should get a lot of credit. He came to fight. He didn't come for the paycheck. It was a tougher fight for Beterbiev than most thought it was going to be going in. Both guys were cut. Yarde boxed and picked his spots well. He's got quick hands. The problem was when he stopped moving and he went to the ropes, Beterbiev worked him over, and that was pretty much it. But 2 things stand out to me. Beterbiev can be hurt, Jack. He's been down twice. He's been hurt a couple times. It doesn't take a titanic shot to hurt him if you're willing to stand in front of him and cut loose. But I'll say this much for him. He is very heavy-handed, not a one-punch knockout guy like Bob Foster or maybe even Matthew Saad Muhammad, but heavy-handed, persistent, and I'll just close with this. He's 8-0 in title fights with 8 knockouts, and the mental and physical pressure he puts on you cannot be overstated.
You know, are you saying that Beterbiev's chin is a liability? Because I don't see it that way at all.
Not a liability, Jack. He can be hurt, but he's smart. He knows to back off when he's hurt, and he resets, and that makes him a thinking fighter. He's not a walk-in slugger and a guy that takes 3 to give 1. But, Jack, he can be hurt, and he's not – and look, it's not above. I don't think that we could see him stop down the road if the guy can finish him. It's like Beterbiev, as strong as he is and the great condition he's in, we've seen guys more durable. He's not durable like a Golovkin or a Canelo or a Hagler or guys we've seen who were killers in those weight divisions. This guy can be hurt, but you have to be willing to stand in front of him to do it.
I don't think Bivol's power represents a serious threat to Beterbiev. I just don't see it.
Okay, I didn't say that, Jack. I'm talking about the fight we saw this past weekend.
But Anthony Yarde is a very hard puncher. Anthony Yarde to really bang. He was a bit of a novice when he challenged Kovalev and got stopped late in the fight.
He got much better.
In that fight. He got much better, and he fought his heart out. He fought the fight of his life, okay? So we keep looking at all these weaknesses against Beterbiev. But I'm going to tell you, a pattern's emerged with Beterbiev in his fights against Vodzik, against Marcus Brown. You can win rounds off him.
Right.
You can actually outbox him, and you can outfight him for a period of time. But to sustain it over 12 rounds is a murderous proposition. You know what it reminds me of? Someone trying to execute a fight plan against Smoking Joe Frazier.
Oh, I'm glad you said that. You're exactly right.
Buster Mathis, when he was young and good, could outbox Joe Frazier
For 4 or 5 rounds,
like he did in the first fight. But eventually, Frazier would break him or any other opponent just about. But the question is this. This is how I see Beterbiev and Bivol. I could see Bivol jumping off to an early lead, maybe a substantial lead. Can he hold Beterbiev off? Can he win 7 of the first 8 rounds and hold Beterbiev off over the last 4? Can he win? Can he go up 8 rounds to 1? And then the last 3 rounds, Beterbiev is coming on like blockbusters at that point. Can you hold him off? That's the question. And I still have serious doubts whether Bivol can hold him off for the full 12. Maybe this is a Jersey Joe Walcott, Rocky Marciano type fight, with Bivol and Beterbiev. But Anthony Yarde was stopped in the 8th round, Frank. It looks like he took him late into the fight, but he had 5 long rounds to go.
Okay, Jack, but here's my issue, and here's why I think it changes a little bit with Bivol. I think Anthony Yarde was caught between styles, that he wasn't sure if he wanted to box and he wasn't sure if he wanted to trade. And he took chances trading. He had his moments, but he got hurt in the end. That kind of slowed him down. Where Bivol goes into the ring, he knows, I'm the boxer in this fight. I'm not going in with the idea to win by knockout. I'm going in there with the idea to box. And here's the other thing, Jack, I am very tough on Andre Ward and especially Timothy Bradley. I forget who said it during the fight. I think it was Ward. He said, whenever Yarde double jabs, he disrupts Beterbiev and causes him to reset. He didn't do it enough. Yarde cannot jab as good as Bivol. That's who Bivol is. Bivol knows his left hand is the key to the fight. I think Bivol is very strong. I think he has this style to give Beterbiev trouble. The only issue is, can he get to the finish line? Again, I don't expect him to go for the knockout. I do think Beterbiev is more of a thinking man fighter than people think. When he's hurt, he knows to back off and to reset and to collect himself. I don't think Bivol will try to do that. I think he'll try to box him. I'd hate to have to make a pick on that fight, but I will say this. As you said earlier, I agree. After watching it the other night, I think Beterbiev can be outboxed. That's who Bivol is, and I think Bivol is a strong guy that won't come out of who he is. That's why it's a great fight. I hope we get to see it.
I want to give Timmy Bradley some credit. I know he drives both of us crazy, and he was doing it again, talking about the stab jab, okay? I don't know what the heck is next with all this nonsense, but this is how I want to give him credit as a commentator, Frank. Think of this. Beterbiev is promoted by Top Rank, who has the ESPN deal. And
right.
Bradley's an ESPN commentator. It's in his best interests to, talk up Beterbiev, who's promoted by Top Rank, as opposed to Bivol, who's promoted by Eddie Hearn and the Zone, the arch enemy. Yet he says he thinks Bivol would win decisively over Beterbiev, that he'd take him to school. He said it. That couldn't have made Bob Arum too happy. The guy, who's employed by ESPN, going against the ESPN fighter, the Top Rank fighter. So kudos to Timmy Bradley for speaking his mind, giving his opinion. And who knows, maybe he was called.
But Jack, isn't that what we want? I mean, even though we hate all those little catchphrases, I want a guy that's not afraid to speak the truth. Teddy Atlas did that. I know a lot of people have a lot of problems with him, but Atlas did that. If Bradley can't be honest, what good is he? So I respect him for that. The guy knows what he's watching. He just gets away from it a little too much and tries to be a chemist and reinvent the wheel. But I respect him for saying that. And Jack,
you got to give credit where it's due. We've been critical of his terms, as this, as that. But
Right.
he showed a level of integrity there. And it's easy to say, yeah, he should. He didn't have to offer that strong an opinion on a potential Bivol Beterbiev fight. He could have downplayed it, made it a little soft, saying, well, look, I'd give an edge right now to Bivol. But instead, he basically said Bivol would take him to school. I like Bivol big time in the fight.
Jack, let me ask you this. There's still talk. We don't know what Bivol is doing next. Do you have any insight on Bivol, if he's going to fight Canelo, if it's going to be at 168? Is that the next fight? I don't like that fight at 168. Everybody knows that, but it might be super big money for Bivol before he goes in with Beterbiev. Is Bivol set on anything yet? Is there anything concrete?
No, it's kind of like one of the mandatories is going to come up soon. But the problem with Bivol, he's not guaranteed of fighting Canelo in the fall. Canelo is fighting John Ryder probably in May. And then Canelo could circle around and fight someone else in the fall. Okay, there's even talk of a guy, Edgar Berlanga, the New Yorker, who we had a discussion on, Frank. You thought he had the potential to be a star. I didn't think he was much. I thought he would be like the number one draft choice who kicked around a little while and didn't, go anywhere. But you want to know something? Eddie Hearn says if Berlanga signs with him, he likes the idea of matching with Canelo. You want to know why Eddie Hearn likes that? Because
it's big money.
The fight, and Canelo is an absolute lock to win. Absolute lock.
I agree with that.
Good. And it's the type of fight Canelo loves now. He's cherry picking all the way the rest of his career. And meanwhile, you keep Bivol waiting and then eventually make him get down to 168. And it's a money grab. That's all it would be for Bivol. And you've said it best, Frank. When a fighter goes down in weight like that, it changes the ball game. You would consider at 175 Bivol a virtual lock to beat Canelo again, but at 168, you even have your doubts that he beat him.
I would probably pick him, Jack, but I'm not as confident. But I know this much. And again, regarding Berlanga, I thought with his looks and his power, brought along the right way, he could be a star. That's not happened yet. The book's not closed. He's very young. But if he fights Canelo, he will definitely lose. Now, they're talking about Beterbiev fighting Callum Smith next.
Yeah.
Whose only loss is to Canelo. He didn't put up much of a fight. I don't see what he brings to the table to beat Beterbiev.
No, he's got a big punch. And if Beterbiev has a questionable chin at all, then Callum Smith is always in with an outside chance because he can bang. He moves forward, but Beterbiev's just too good.
I see that fight going the same way the Smith fight went. Yes, yeah. Smith can bang. Callum Smith can bang like Joe Smith. I just think the physicality and the durability and eventual pressure of Beterbiev would be the difference.
You just mentioned Joe Smith. Frank Warren, Anthony Yard's promoter, now wants to bring Yard back against Joe Smith. He felt, if Yard had fought a champion the caliber of Joe Smith, Yard would be champion. And that's the fight they want. And, if the money's right, Joe Smith is going to fight Anthony Yard. He'd go to England and fight him. And Anthony Yard, to me, is still pretty marketable, especially in the UK.
Right.
He would beat Joe Smith there. And then, one of the belts would come vacant, that Beterbiev holds, and he'd probably go after that belt. And
that would be a good
along the line.
Jack, Joe Smith is not a no-hoper against Yard. I would probably pick Yard, but see, this again goes back to the different kinds of power. Beterbiev is heavier-handed than Joe Smith, but Joe Smith is more of a one-punch, lights-out guy. And we saw that Beterbiev, even though he had to work him over, he did pretty much finish him with one shot. Joe Smith would have that chance. I just don't know if he has the defense and the head movement to deal with yards boxing and quicker hands. But that's a very good fight, and you can make a case it's a 55-45 fight. Not quite 60-40 in yards favor, but I'd like to see that fight.
It's a marketable fight, definitely. And
that's a good way to say it, yes.
I think Anthony Yard is going to win one of the belts somewhere along the line.
Jack, before we get to Alex Rochia,
but he'll win a belt somewhere along the line, I believe.
Before we get to Alex Rochia, Jack, do you have any interest in all in Tommy Fury versus Jake Paul?
It's entertainment. If you like entertainment, watch it. That's all it is. From a boxing's purest viewpoint, listen, Jake Paul, kudos to him. He's in the gym. He's working out. He's trying. I don't think he's a fraud. He's a real fighter, but he's fighting non-boxers for the most part. Tommy Fury, how committed is he?
And he's fought nothing but onions and journeymen.
Right. It's more like the entertainment value. He's kind of like doing this. This has a soap opera effect because you have the Fury family behind me sitting at the press conference. Tyson Fury's laughing. And Tyson Fury even says the family's going to disown Tommy Fury if he loses.
Right, if he loses.
Tyson Fury, you actually believe him. The Furies might actually disown him. That's what makes it entertaining. It's not a bluff. Listen, it's entertainment. If someone wants to get the fight, it's in the news, whatever. So I'm not against it as long as it doesn't affect a real fight. You want to know something, Frank? Consider this. The fights we want to see, okay? Like Crawford Spence, they're not making those fights. Bivol Beterbiev, they might never make it. It's going to take an extra long time. So what the heck? If I want to enjoy Fury, you know what I mean, and Jake Paul, why not? Because the real fights we want to see bad enough aren't being made so quick. Devin Haney's fighting Lomachenko. You could say it's a good fight, but look, this isn't the same Lomachenko. But if you tell me
Jack, that's still very marketable. I still want to see that, and I pay for that.
Yeah, okay. It's marketable because of the amount of respect you have for Lomachenko, as we all do. Okay, you don't want to count him out until you see it yourself. But the real elite fight, if I told you, Frank, let's substitute Lomachenko with Shakur Stevenson against Devin Haney, you would be like, wow. Craig Wright puts down, well, at last Jake is fighting an actual boxer. Craig is actually right on that part.
Right.
But is Tommy Fury an actual boxer? Just because you had pro fights, are you an actual boxer?
He hasn't fought anyone with a winning record or close to 500.
Yeah,
I know that.
I understand. It's not an MMA guy.
Not an MMA. Yeah, at least those guys are boxers.
Those guys, have a degree of skill if they could transition it over to boxing. So yeah, and okay, Joe Bergman back. He thinks Yarde's quicker than Smith. I agree. Frank and myself and Joe. Yarde would be a solid favorite. I don't know how many.
Right, but it's a winnable fight for Joe Smith.
If it's the same Joe Smith that went on the run of unexpected victories, okay? If it's the same Joe Smith who beat Jesse Hart, okay? He'll beat Alvarez.
You think the Beterbiev fight might have taken something out of him mentally?
Yeah, it always does. It always does. You lose your way. When you get destroyed like that, what's the first thing you do? That's nothing, Frank. You keep away from boxing for a few months. You want to clear your head. And in those few months, you start losing your skills. Your physical presence, you lose a little bit. When do athletes usually go downhill in professional sports? From one season to the next. In the off season, they're not competing. They lose that little bit of timing. And sometimes
I think with Joe Smith, Jack, it would just be mental. He didn't take a beating. The fight went 2 rounds? So I think he just has to process that in his head. I don't think it'll be physical, but we know in this sport, mental is actually bigger than physical. So he might not be the same guy.
I never go for that term. You mentioned Teddy Atlas. I have tremendous respect for Teddy Atlas, tremendous. But I disagree with this part where he might say 90% of the sport is mental. Well, Frank, get this crazy guy who really believes he'll knock out anyone in the ring, get him off the street. He's 100% sure he's going to win, and he gets flattened in the match.
But, Jack, I think he means if you have guys that are equal skill, two elite guys. But I do think, Jack, a lot of it is mental. Look what happens when we see somebody like Mike Tyson. Everybody after he fought Buster Douglas that fought him, all went in the ring believing, okay, he's beatable. Look at Boots Ennis. Now everybody's coming out of the woodwork to fight him because he looked like a mortal. So mental does play a big part.
No, I don't think anyone's coming out of the woodwork for Boots yet. They have a reason to say, oh, who wants to fight Boots? He's nothing. Look what he did in this last fight. But he
won't have trouble getting fights now, Jack.
Oh yeah, he will. You won't see
the
Fences still taking him on right now. No. But they're coming out of the woodwork for a guy like Golovkin where they wouldn't before because they know he's...
Well, that's because he's old now.
Right. He's old. He's past it. And it's the same with Lomachenko. If this was the Lomachenko at his absolute best, you wouldn't have these guys lined up to fight him. Devin Haney happens to have the belts. Said if that's appealing to Lomachenko, because Devin Haney, to me, is the real lightweight champion of the world, not Tank Davis. You could say Tank.
Right. I agree.
That's another discussion. But you'll have a Shakur Stevenson. He's going to want to fight. He would give anything to fight Lomachenko. But if this was the Lomachenko in his prime, at his very best, these guys wouldn't be calling him out like that. They'd be nervous. It doesn't mean they wouldn't be.
I'm not sure about Haney, Jack, because I don't think Lomachenko is really a full-fledged lightweight. And I think even the best Lomachenko would have had a problem with Devin Haney. And I think Haney has the fighting aptitude to pick up on that. But the fact that Lomachenko isn't at his best, he's going to be the underdog in the fight.
No. What I'm saying, Frank, is they want to fight Lomachenko a lot more now than they would.
Because he's a little more vulnerable and it's money.
Yeah, it's going to eventually happen with Terrence Crawford. You'll see when he's starting to slip, guys are going to step up and going to want to fight him. No one wants to fight Terrence Crawford.
Well, speaking of Terrence Crawford, Jack, Alex Rochia wants to fight him. I saw Alex Rochia fight. I saw some of his clips against George Ashe, and I saw his fight against Rashad Ellis. Rocha has nothing to beat Crawford with. I know he's a southpaw, no shot.
He punches well to the body. I saw the fight. He's strong. Offensively, he's good. He's relentless. He moves forward, but he's very hittable.
That'll get him destroyed by Crawford.
Right, but I think that's a little hook for Golden Boy to match him with Rocha in the first fight, because Bernard Hopkins said on the Zone, well, they have a major announcement, Golden Boy, to make it. And they mentioned, well, is that Crawford fighting Rocha? And Hopkins said, yeah. And now we saw the picture circulating, Frank. Terrence
of the three of them, yes.
Hopkins and De La Hoya. And listen, maybe for one fight, he's going to go along with them because Crawford's going to fight somebody. And maybe Golden Boy steps up and they make a very sweet one fight offer for Crawford. It doesn't mean he's going to be fighting for Golden Boy beyond the one fight. And also, sports, it's about relationships, promotional groups and fighters. For example, Canelo likes Eddie Hearn a lot. He doesn't have a contract with Eddie Hearn. He's going to fight by fight basis, but he likes Eddie Hearn a lot. He wants him to promote him. Maybe Crawford likes Hopkins and De La Hoya, two iconic fighters. Maybe he feels that connection, that buddy connection.
I could see that.
Yeah, and listen, and maybe they'd wind up being the best promoter for him.
That's plausible.
But the way Oscar says, oh, he can make the Errol Spence fight, give me a break.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like Al Heyman's going to buckle to Oscar.
Oscar, yeah.
Jack, before we get to our hypothetical fights, I wanted to touch on this last week, and we didn't get to it. Last week, to the day almost, was the 50th anniversary of the Joe Frazier-George Foreman fight in Kingston, Jamaica. Now, over the last couple of weeks, I've had some arguments with guys about some of the surroundings about going on with that fight regarding why the fight happened and who wanted the fight and that Yank Durham made a mistake. And I just want to I want to clear the record up about that fight. And before I go there, I just want to say, to this day, it's the most awesome display of two-handed punching power I've ever seen exhibited by a heavyweight in George Foreman. However, what people forget about that fight, Jack, and how it came to be, you know this, but I'm going to go over it. At that time, Al Lee was trying to get a rematch with Frazier, and they were fighting over purse parity. Frazier's argument was, I split the purse with him the first time. He didn't lose the title in the ring. He was undefeated. He had to claim the title. I beat him convincingly. I'm the champ. On the other hand, Ali says, I'm the draw. People are coming to see me. I want at least 50-50. Frazier was so hell-bent on not splitting the purse with Ali, he was backed into a corner because Ali said, Joe, what I'm going to do is I'm going to eliminate the competition. And if you go back, you know this, he fought all the contenders. Well, there was one contender he couldn't get in the ring, and that was George Foreman. Dick Sadler said, Muhammad, we love you, but we want the man with the title, and he's a better fit for George. Long story short, Frazier, in order not to split the purse with Ali, turned down the $3 million guarantee to fight George Foreman for $850,000. But what most people don't understand about that, Jack, is Yank Durham implored Joe to fight Muhammad. He goes, look, Foreman's awkward. He's big. We don't know a lot about him. We know Ali. If you fight him, if you lose a decision, you're 1-1. You have a third fight. This Foreman can mess everything up. And Joe actually said to Yank, he says, I'm not splitting the purse with Clay. Make the fight with Foreman, or I'll go above you and I'll make it myself. And that's how that fight came to be, because Frazier was at the point that he either had to defend against Ali, who was number one, or Foreman, who was number two, or they were going to strip him of the title. He chose Foreman, one of the worst decisions in boxing history as far as a managerial decision, but it wasn't Yank's fault. Joe didn't think much of Foreman, Jack, until they got in the ring.
I'm going to tell you, I'm not just saying this, Frank. I've picked so many fights wrong in my lifetime, so many fights wrong. I don't want to go down the list of all the ones I had wrong, but I did pick Foreman to knock Frazier out in 4 rounds because I saw that at that stage of his career, especially, he was going to be a sitting duck for Foreman. The Frazier who fought Terry Daniels and Ron Sten after Ali, the only version of Frazier that would have had a shot at beating Foreman was the one of the first Jimmy Ellis fight and the first Ali fight.
Right,
maybe
February 16th or March 8th.
Right, maybe he outlasts Foreman, walks through hell, maybe goes down once or twice and outlasts him the way Ron Lyle nearly did with Foreman later on. But was Frazier necessarily wrong? Okay, because when they eventually did have the rematch, no world title was on the line, and they did split the pie 50-50 at that point. Joe realized, I'm sure, I'm not the champion anymore, but Ali didn't insist on more money. I find it hard to believe. Ali wanted his revenge with Frazier so bad. I find it hard to believe Ali wouldn't have taken a little less.
Jack, he wouldn't. He wouldn't. He was hell-bent on, I'm the draw. If you go back and look at the interviews back then, he was saying all along, Joe, your fights are on free TV. My fights are beamed all over the world. Nobody cares about you. I'm the draw. You may be the champ, but I'm the people's champ, and many people think I beat you the first time. So Ali was not going to back off on that. But, Jack, another thing people forget, and picking Foreman, that's a great pick. Now, at that time, I was about 13 years old. I didn't think the United States Air Force could beat Joe Frazier, and I actually felt at that time that Foreman was a little too clumsy and awkward and just not refined enough to beat an elite guy like Frazier. But Joe was a 3.5 to 1 favorite for a reason. And besides yourself that I know of, Howard Cosell went on record saying that Foreman is going to stop Frazier. But, Jack, his reason was he never broke it down stylistically. He said Joe Frazier retired as a fighter on March 8th, 1971, and all he had interest in doing then was tour the country with his band and go and sing.
Frazier had become soft. I was at Madison Square Garden August 4th, 1970 to see Foreman stop George
Like Chuvalo.
3 rounds. Earlier that year in February, as you know, Frazier stopped Jimmy Ellis to win the title because Ali
Foreman fought on the undercard.
Right, exactly.
Peralta
there. And Singham stopped Chuvalo. I said, he's the guy who's eventually going to beat Joe Frazier. Okay? I mean, the feeling was August 4th, 1970. We didn't even know that Ali would be back in the ring for sure.
No.
He didn't even come back till October that year. So Ali wasn't quite at the forefront, okay? It was Frazier, the champion. So the focus was Frazier Foreman, when they're going to meet. Then, of course, Ali gets his license back, and that kind of changed the equation.
Jack,
let me ask
I
you
remember.
Oh, Frank, you got to educate me on something that I found fascinating. I saw on social media you going back and forth, and there's something you put down that was of a lot of interest to me. You put down that Eddie Futch, correct me if the words are wrong, please, tried to undermine or one-up Yank Durham. Now, Futch was Frazier's assistant trainer, and of course, Ken Norton's lead trainer. Norton and Frazier were stablemates. I spoke once. I could tell you an Eddie Futch story, but there's not time. But I'm going to make it very short. I did speak to him about Yank Durham once because Futch was sensitive what I wrote about him once, and he wasn't happy. But we squashed it, and everything was great between us in our talk. And then all I meant to say was Yank Durham was Joe's main trainer, discovered him. And I remember that he said that he really enjoyed working with Yank Durham. How much? But then I hear you said he tried to one-up Yank. Tell me about this.
That was the feeling in the Frazier circle that Eddie was always trying to take the credit for Joe's success, but Yank cultivated the style. Eddie helped him pick some fights in 66, 67 against
Eddie Machin, when that first
Machin, and who was the other guy? Who was the other guy from who was the other guy from California that was real tough that went the distance with him? Short black guy, stocky. He fought Liston. Scrap Iron Johnson.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yes, Scrap Iron.
I didn't hear that, Jack. I'm sorry. So that was the feeling in the camp that behind the scenes, Eddie would be telling the writers that he was the reason and he devised the plan on how to beat Ali. And that's not true, Jack. Yank Durham got Frazier in like late 61. And when Joe Frazier first started to box, do you know he used to dance around the ring and jab like Muhammad Ali, and he thought that was boxing? And Yank had to sit him down and say, Joe, you're never going to beat Clay like that. That's his game. We have to take a style and fit your body. You have to be inside. You can't stay outside with him. He'll eat you alive. So, yes, of course, Eddie helped. Having an Eddie Futch around, how can that not be a good thing? But the point is, Yank recognized and told Frazier early, if you ever want to be the champ, You're going to have to beat Ali, and we're going to have to devise a strategy for you to beat him. And before the first fight, I'll never forget, Jack, the article in Life magazine where they're both on the cover wearing the tuxedos. That was one of the best pre-fight articles I ever read on that fight. I actually stole the magazine out of my 7th grade class to read it 13,000 times. Anyhow, if you remember in the article, Yank says, we developed this style a long time ago to beat Clay. And now Joe has it down pat, and he's going to find out it's going to be a lot different against Joe, because against the other guys he fought, he could pick his spots and go back on his own. He says he's going to find out going back on your own is a lot different than going back when you're being forced to go back like Joe is going to make him. So that was the feeling around the clan, that they love and respected Eddie Futch, no doubt about it, Jack, but they always felt behind the scenes he was trying to take the credit for Joe's success. And to those that know, they know that Eddie did not call the shots until Yank passed in August of 73, and Eddie's first fight as the head guy in Frazier's corner was the rematch to Ali, which he lost.
But Yank Durham, I don't think he would have felt too threatened, because he could have gotten rid of Eddie Futch's, the assistant.
Right.
He had that clout with Joe where he could have done that, because Joe looked up to Yank like a father.
Absolutely. And the other thing people don't realize, Jack, to this day, and Frazier took it to his grave, even though publicly they've said they're okay with Eddie stopping Manila, Joe was never happy with that decision. And I think it was the right decision, but the fighters never going to go along with that. But he wanted to come out for the 15th round. He would have taken a shellacking like LaMotta did against Robinson in the Valentine's Day fight. I don't think Joe goes down, but he would have taken a horrific beating and maybe even lost his eyesight in the 15th round.
We could just speculate, but I didn't think Frazier had anything left in the 15th, to come out for the 15th. But the ironic part about it is Frazier's body language in the corner was actually a little better than Ali's. Remember when they stopped the fight, Frazier stands up off the stool. It's like mentally he was willing himself that he had more left, and Ali obviously wasn't going to quit on the stool. That is
thank you
stuff. I don't want to even dignify that, even though some people, Ali may have been a little delirious talking, but he was going to come out and he was going to suck it up one more round, and do whatever he had to do to the point of exhaustion. But, who knows how, there's so many scenarios what would have happened. Maybe Frazier goes down, he gets counted out. Maybe Frazier gets pounded.
I don't think he goes down, Jack.
Yeah, we don't know.
I think he's too sturdy, and I don't think Ali had enough power left, especially at that time, to knock him off his feet. But he could have done a lot of damage and hurt him. And the part that makes me crazy is, think about this. Muhammad Ali never beat up Joe Frazier more in one round than he did in the 14th in Manila. It was all one way. At that point in the fight, Ali was actually the stronger guy and the harder puncher. To fathom that either one of those guys would quit on the stool in front of the other guy, it's just not possible.
Yeah,
it's not possible.
Getting to our mythical fights, I want to retract something, Frank, publicly. We went over the Holmes-Joe Louis fight. I was thinking in terms if they fought 3 times, Holmes would win 2 out of 3. If they fought 5 times, he might win 3-1. Best 3 out of 5, maybe 3-2, whatever. But I wasn't considering the very best of Joe Louis in the Max Spare fight. That version of Joe Louis, I think, beats the best of Larry Holmes. And if anyone wants to question me, don't question me until you've watched the full Joe Louis Max Spare fight. Joe Louis says that was him at his best. He could have fought all night. He never felt so great. And he looked at Joe Louis was nimble on his feet. He was dancing, Frank. He was moving side to side. He was quick on his feet. That wasn't a shuffling Joe Louis. That was dancing. And that jab was like, it was wrecking bear. I mean, it was a Sonny Liston type jab.
You are falling prey to the mob, Jack. Larry Holmes had the style to give Joe Louis more trouble. If you're going to go off of a one fight like that, then Frazier beats everybody but Foreman. Jack, I love Joe Louis. He's the greatest offensive fighter and boxer in heavyweight history. Not saying he beats everybody, but he's the best package of fighter. Better than Ali, better than Holmes, better than Foreman. However, Holmes had the style to beat him, but I will just say this. I'm not married to the idea that Holmes won. But if I was the odds maker, I would make him a 6-5 favorite.
Okay, I just wanted to get my retraction in that the Brown Bomber of the Max Spath.
Okay, Jack. So my friends now like you better than me. That's good. Okay. All right, Jack, here we go. In the world of hypothetical fights, fight number 1 between welterweight champions Thomas Hearns and Jose Napoles. And before you answer who wins, I'm going to throw a caveat in. Who do you rank higher on the all-time welterweight great list, Hearns or Napoles?
Napoles.
You rate him higher?
Yeah. Yeah, but
okay.
I had to do a list top welterweights in history, yeah.
Okay, so now that you said that, I rate Hearns higher. Who wins if they fight? At their best.
Hearns wins. The Hearns that destroyed Pepino Cuevas, the Hearns of the first Leonard fight. Napoles had trouble with movement. Okay, look at Hedgeman Lewis, the first fight. Hedgeman Lewis gave him a bit of a close call. And Napoles lost a couple of fights on cuts to L.C. Morgan, and then he lost his title to Billy Backus. Regained it. I will say this, there's a red flag that would concern me with Hearns, and that was his fight against Harold Weston. He laid a beating on Harold Weston, something severe, and as it turned out, Harold Weston suffered a detached retina in that fight. Right. And as beat up as Weston was, Hearns was winded when they stopped it at the end of 6.
That wasn't prime Hearns, though.
No, but you want to know something? Yeah, but prime Hearns, did he have a long run as a welterweight? Let's be honest.
He 32 fights.
32, but what were his legacy fights? Pepino Cuevas, where he blitzed Cuevas. Maybe he blitzes Napoles that way. Maybe, okay? And then the first Leonard fight, which is an all-time classic fight.
He beat up a pretty good Randy Shields also.
Didn't it take him 13 rounds?
12 rounds.
12 rounds, and Shields was retired on the stool.
Shields was a hell of a fighter, though, Jack. I mean, he beat Ray Leonard in the amateurs. He was a real fighter.
He's a real fighter, and he went the distance with Leonard in the pros. I understand that, but he was no Jose Napoles. Napoles didn't mount a fierce offense. If Hearns started to tire and Jose started to take it to him. But with that said, I'm gonna go with Napoles in that fight. I think that the Tommy Hearns at his devastating best doesn't allow Napoles to.
You said you're going to go with Napoles. You meant Hearns.
No, I meant Hearns. I'm sorry. I'll go with Hearns because I think he comes out blazing Hearns. And even though I think Napoles survives the early rounds, he's cut up by the middle rounds. He comes on at times. Hearns manages to be in good enough shape to go 15 if he has to, because I can't see Napoles pulling a Ray Leonard late in the fight. He wasn't quite that type of fight. He was more the methodical type. And Hearns stopping Napoles on cuts in 9-10 rounds. That's the Hearns at his best.
Okay. I like Hearns. I think, first of all, Napoles fought welterweight because he really couldn't get the fights at junior welterweight. It wasn't much of a division then. I think he's too small. Hearns is the same size as Monzon. He's a harder puncher. He's more offensive-minded. I think Hearns can beat him outside with the jab. And I think if Napoli's tries to come inside and take it to Hearns, I don't think he has the punch to hurt Hearns enough to turn the fight. And I think he walks into the right hands and the left hooks to the body. I just think Hearns wins no matter how the fight goes, whether they box or they trade. I think he's too big, too quick, and too strong. Just too much physicality there. I like Hearns, and as I said, I rate him higher. Number two.
Just a little quick sidebar. Angelo Dundee said right after Hearns had fought welterweight, right after, the Leonard fight, at Hearns' best at welterweight, he would have lost to Emil Griffith at welterweight. The two guys at their best at welterweight. And the great Angelo Dundee said Griffith would have licked Hearns.
I actually think Griffith is a tougher matchup for Hearns than Napoli's. I would pick Hearns slightly, but that's a different matchup. All right, number two. We're going to go to the big guys now. Ken Norton versus Evander Holyfield. Who do you rank higher on the all-time pantheon? And then give me your winner.
I have to, Holyfield taking into consideration cruiserweight, heavyweight, everything he did for his career, you have to rank him ahead of Ken Norton.
Okay, Norton, I agree. I rank him higher.
One opponent pony, basically. The three classic fights with Ali. He had the classic fight with Holmes, Jerry Quarry, Dwayne Bobbitt, Jimmy Young. But Holyfield's body of work was just greater. Forget that late career losses. As bad as they were, Norton had a couple of bad, outings too late on. And obviously the one-round blitzes, the Shavers, and Cooney. But head-to-head competition, I like Kenny Norton at his best.
You think he beats Holyfield?
I absolutely do think that Kenny Norton, who fought Ali 3 times, and fought Larry Holmes, and fought Jerry Quarry. Yeah, I absolutely do. Holyfield was a very good puncher, great combination puncher, but he wasn't the type of puncher that Norton had to fear. He wasn't an Ernie Shavers, Jerry Cooney, George Foreman type puncher. Norton would be able to withstand his power the way he did Jerry Quarry's power. He would. Holyfield's a much better fighter. Holyfield would be in the fight, but Norton never wavered in long fights. In a long fight where you couldn't hurt Norton, against Ali all 3 times and against Holmes, he never wavered. He always kept coming, and he was a nightmare for these guys till the end. And he'd be a nightmare for Holyfield. Holyfield would show all the heart in the world. He would fight back, hit Norton combinations, back Norton up, maybe have Norton in trouble at times, but then Norton would reset and keep taking it to Holyfield. And Norton had a great jab. He would be scoring with that jab on the way in. He would decision Holyfield in a classic fight.
Okay, I disagree. I think the best Norton was between 73 and 75. I think the best Holyfield was between 90 and 92. So if I take Holyfield of, say, Buster Douglas or the Foreman fight, and I match him against Ali of the first or second fight, or maybe the Quarry fight. I know this goes against contrary opinion, but I think that Holyfield, I just think he could outwork Norton. I actually think of the two, he had the better jab. Jerry Quarry, who you mentioned, was pretty much having his way with Norton until he got tired. And I just think if he could do that.
He wasn't. Frank,
Jack Quarry for the first 3 rounds beat the crap out of Norton.
No, he wasn't.
Until he got tired.
Come on, Frank. Quarry threw the kitchen sink at Norton.
And he was getting the better of him, but he took the fight on 10 days' notice.
Quarry was hoping he would get lucky. He threw everything at Norton because he knew he couldn't go the distance with Norton, that Norton would dominate him. So what did he do? He threw everything at Norton for a few rounds. He threw the kitchen.
But Jack, the point is, though, he had Norton shook and he had him backing up. I think that Holyfield could do that ×2. He was bigger than Quarry, even more durable. He hit harder. He was probably even a little quicker and a better boxer. I think Holyfield wins the decision. I will cede to you that Norton would fight confident because Holyfield is not a life taker as far as a puncher goes, but I like Holyfield in that fight.
Let me ask you this. Put Holyfield opposite Norton during the 3 Ali fights and the Holmes fight. And do you think if Holmes isn't opposite Norton and it's Holyfield, do you think Holyfield beats Ken Norton that night?
I think the Holyfield that fought Riddick Bowe and Foreman and Buster Douglas, I would make him the favorite. I think he beats him. I hate to say this. I'm not the hugest Norton fan. I think he's a little overrated, and I think Larry Holmes said it best. Ken Norton made a career out of fighting Muhammad Ali. Jimmy Young, to me, beat Ken Norton and didn't get the decision. If he can do that, Holyfield can do it. And if you look at it, Holmes, Norton, and Ali all stunned and shook Norton with right hands. They didn't drop him or stop him, but if they can do that, I think Holyfield can do it. I like Holyfield to win a decision, and I rank him higher. All right, Jack. The next one I'm not going to use. We'll use this next week because we already used the Hearns fight. Let's spend our last couple minutes on this one. And this is a great one, and I have no idea where you're going to go. Joe Louis against Sonny Liston. Who do you rank higher? I think I know the answer. And who wins?
No, I mean, you rank Louis higher. Come on. You got to be joking, Frank. If you look at their careers, it's not close. I'm not going to come back next week and say the Louis and the Max Spare fight. I got to go with Sonny Liston for the simple reason is
Liston to beat Louis.
Yeah, you want to know something? Guys like Sonny Liston and Mike Tyson were very quick destroyers who had weight, strength. They would pounce on Louis immediately, and it would be a shootout right off the bat. Louis needed a little time to get going, just that little amount of time. Not that he couldn't start quick. He obviously could, like he didn't.
But, Jack, other than Patterson, Liston didn't knock out any elite guys in 1 or 2 rounds.
Liston of the first Ali fight, he came at Ali looking for the quick KO. That's Sonny Liston going all out to destroy Louis quickly. What's Louis going to do to hold him off?
I'll tell you when I have my turn.
Like Louis can maybe jab, hit him certain shots down the slot. Maybe Louis catches him and knocks Sonny out quick. But Sonny did have a great chin, despite the Ali rematch. He did have a great chin in his prime. So I just don't, how is he going to buy time before he can unload on Sonny and knock him out?
Okay. I like Louis to win that fight. Again, I will see. Liston's jab is a problem. But here's how Louis, I think, would defend it. He would not go at Sonny. He knows Sonny's going to push the fight behind his jab. Louis could step back and counter. I think he forces Liston to lunge and to reach with the jab. I think he counters him up the middle inside. Louis was a much more efficient, better two-handed puncher. Liston would be right there. I think after a couple tough rounds, I think that Louis would break Liston down and would land the cleaner shots inside. I think he would not go at Liston. I think he would go away from the jab, make it miss, come up, and then hit him with the combinations inside. He's the better inside fighter. He's the quicker-handed fighter. And even though Liston has power, Liston scored most of his knockouts with his left hook. I think Louis would have been able to defend that inside and make Sonny Liston pay with it. I think Louis would win. That said, Sonny Liston, in my book, as far as head-to-head, I only make him an underdog to Ali, to Holmes, probably to Louis, and the Foreman. Other than that, Sonny Liston makes my top 5 or 6, Jack, and I think head-to-head, there's not many guys that beat him. So I can see your reason for picking Liston. I just think Louis would diffuse that jab after some rough going.
Yeah, I could see your logic, Lewis's path to victory. What you're saying makes sense, but I'm thinking of the listing that would be hell bent on destroying, Lewis, any other opponent right off.
Even the Lewis that fought Max Baer. I want to get that clear. The Lewis that fought Max Baer, he still beats him.
Yeah, that one I have a problem with because Lewis can move this and that, but you got to buy
those
time.
Quick hands inside.
Against the Larry Holmes, against an Ali, you don't have to worry about getting destroyed. You have a chance to execute your fight plan against those guys. Maybe it doesn't work because Holmes and Ali are so great, but at least you get to execute it like Ken Norton could execute his fight plan against Ali and Holmes, regardless of what you thought of the decision. But against the Sonny Liston and Ken Norton couldn't execute his fight plan. He'd get blitzed immediately. But Frank, good discussion.
We disagreed on 2 out of 3, Jack. That was fun.
Yeah, okay.
All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Had a lot of fun. Take care.